Greetings. This is Heidi Hayes-Jacobs, and I'm delighted to be spending time with Kelsey Jaskot from Eduplanet21, who is a remarkable educator and has worked for years on making curriculum mapping accessible and purposeful on a first-rate software platform. And in my own work on mapping, I take the stance of being agnostic about curriculum mapping software. We use so many different ones. And I'm always happy to feature the work on any platform that is doing some exciting work. And in particular, what has been exciting for me is to see how Eduplanet21 has taken on storyboarding and has really been able to integrate it effectively into their mapping platform. So we're going to go into that a little bit. So Kelsey, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually came to Eduplanet about 7 years ago now. So that feels a lot longer in so many good ways, but I've been able to see kind of how our customers have evolved over time, which I'm so thankful for. But I actually come from a background in nonprofit management. So having a non-educator view kind of as I started off my career in education has also really helped me to kind of have a well-rounded perspective of it. So to be able to understand, how difficult it could be to learn new pedagogies, to just be able to, kind of understand the learning curve that folks have to go through in order to be effective curriculum writers and to do this work really well. So I'm really appreciative for that background that I have. But just over the past 7 years, like I've said, I've worked with so many schools and districts around the globe. And all the problems are always the same, right? Every problem you have with curriculum writing or every problem you encounter just as an organization, whether you're in Asia or you're in America, it's always the same issue. And so that's one of the things that I can really appreciate. And just
let me ask you a little bit about your take on mapping. There's a number of features in your particular software platform, but in particular, unit design and curriculum mapping are a big feature of it. And yes. As we both know, the goal is often vertical articulation, better articulation K through 12 through our maps, and then cross grade levels and so forth, our ability to align to standards and the like. But in your experience, because you are coming at it from a different lens, and I think that's really interesting as a software specialist, as a business person, as a customer support person, what are some of the ahas that you've heard from people about mapping? Let's just start with that, and then I want to turn to storyboarding per se.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the aha of mapping just in general is, like you mentioned, as you get deeper and deeper into the work, you start to really understand how you play such a pivotal role in every child's experience in your organization. So every lesson that you do, every assessment that you provide really directly impacts them. And being able to see holistically across an organization and how, a unit that I might be working on in my classroom has connections to a unit that you might be working on just allows us a greater perspective and the ability to kind of say, if we can make some better connections for these kids, the ability to understand on that deeper level is really what we need to get to. And I think that's something that just the more I reflect, I am so focused on deep understanding of those core concepts, right? But again, just the ability to kind of work together, work collaboratively, understand what's going on one classroom to another, one grade level to another is just absolutely key.
That's great. I was curious what brought you to storyboarding and how we connected on that from your point of view.
Yeah, great question. Well, I know I've worked with you on a number of projects over the years, as well as Allison Zmuda. So I'm always following the work. But I think what I love most about storyboarding and what kind of captured my attention initially is how easy it is to get started. So I think when people think of curriculum writing, it's not always a teacher's favorite thing. I'm one of those few curriculum nerds out there, for lack of a better term, that really enjoys it and loves to dig into it. But it's easy, it's accessible. It's in student-friendly language, right? So it's not just something, there's always a gap between the taught curriculum and the written curriculum. We hear that everywhere we go. But finally, Storyboards kind of blends the two together. It's a usable document that I can just create and turn over, understand it, from a kid's perspective, but also a parent. And I think with a lot of the transparency conversations that have been happening around curriculum, that's really been a driving factor as well.
Yeah, I think you say it really well. One of the things that Allison and I worked on in our book was try to convey a fresh look at curriculum as narrative.
Yeah.
So that a student can tell the story of Algebra 1. If they don't see the connection between the concepts, it's problematic. And if they're taking rocks and minerals and a whole slew of science units in third grade, they need to see the connections across the year. And we sometimes hope that happens, but I don't know how deliberate we are. And we thought if we could write curriculum directly to students and put more of our time and energy into displaying it with visuals and icons and a format that was accessible, with that emphasis on connections, it would work. So you're aware of that, but what you've done that's really interesting, if you could explain to the group, is how you took that, and in a way, you're allowing me to have some agility here, where I could do a fairly traditional design, am I correct? And then I can flip it and have a storyboard. Am I correct on that?
You absolutely are. Yeah, absolutely. So within our platform, we have a lot of flexibility and different ways you can go about setting up a course or setting up a unit, different templates and things of that nature that you can utilize. So I can tell you that just, as quickly as you said that, flip a switch and it kind of turns. Over the past couple of months, we released a storyboard template, and I think it was September. We've had probably a quarter of our customers at least start using that already, which is huge. It's really, really been helpful, and they're able to flip a switch of their current curriculum, and it kind of converts it into a storyboard format. And then they can go in and tweak that and edit it. And it gives them a good starting point. But also starting from scratch in the system is quite simple. And I'm happy, Heidi, to show kind of some of what that looks like as well. I don't want to overstep here, but I do have it up in the background.
Oh, no, you're not. There's nothing. We're on the same step. How's that?
Awesome. Well, I'll go ahead and show you what that's looking like. So give me 1 second here. I'll share my screen. And hopefully everybody can see this okay. But just kind of a little bit of background in Eduplanet. Like I said, we're kind of, you can design your curriculum anywhere from the course down to the unit level. But our storyboards are really kind of living as a course template at this point. So if I pop into just one of these, you can kind of see how it's laid out in the platform. So it allows you to just at a high level start to define what your course level information looks like. Its name, subjects, grade levels, etc. If you'd like, you can actually define, maybe it's an overarching essential question for the course, or something that's a driving, compelling question, something that's really, designed to engage those learners. And then you can kind of see as I move through how the platform really allows you to build a storyboard right here. So I can start to create what are the units that my students are going to be, moving through over the course of my school year or over the course of my semester. I can start to incorporate imagery in. And what you're seeing below, in this particular storyboard example, I have a focus of the story and student learning targets. But Heidi, to your point, if I wanted to switch that to something with, standards, you see how I just took a second here, but I can change my template and I can start to incorporate other elements into my storyboard. Or, maybe there's one that we'd like to incorporate transfer goals over time. And that's something we can do as well. And you're seeing how it's kind of keeping that information here and allowing me some agility to be able to change that template and kind of grow over time, which has been fabulous.
So in a way, if we take a look at if you could pull the menu up, what I was struck with, the one you just showed a moment ago, the drop down.
Yeah.
So I can choose. Yeah. One thing that I think was really interesting was that you've created it so I could have a whole slew of elements that are components rather that I could add to my storyboard. And one of the reasons I think this is important is we often get asked this, like we're laying out the storyboard, what rows, so to speak, should we have? We want a row of learning targets, we want a row of focus of the story, and so forth. And Allison and I have a few that we think are really important. We think you need a very strong, clear, vibrant title that reflects sort of the lens or the focus. You need an image that really galvanizes attention and gets to the essence of it. And we need a focus of the story, the kind of overview that describes it. We think that's really central. But you can start to add other rows. And the danger is that we could start to do the same thing we do in regular curriculum writing. It could be too jam-packed.
Yes.
You don't want to have 15 different rows, but you could, if I'm seeing this correctly, and this is how I saw it when you provided it, is I have a menu here so that if I wanted parents to have access, I might say, you know what? They're going to want to know the focus of the story. They probably aren't going to care about essential questions, and they may not care about standards. Maybe they'll want learning targets. But they may want to see some of the authentic assessments or some of the demonstrations or stuff we're going to do. Or maybe they want to just even get some additional resources. You can populate this with kind of customize it so the storyboard audience can be tailored. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yes. And I would say even across an organization, if one department wants their storyboard to look slightly different than another, even internally, that's a really great way to be able to do that as well.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
The other thing, if you don't mind showing this, because I think this is another really interesting feature, is if you click on, you can go to the back end, so to speak, and we can see a more traditional unit design model. If we could pull that up, that would be great, because I thought that was pretty nifty.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and that's kind of exactly the point, Heidi. So as you start to move through and create your storyboard, you'll see that I can actually open this up, and this is going to take me into what we call unit planner. So this is a more, to your point, a more traditional unit planning template. And this can be customized for every organization. But as I scroll down a bit, you're already seeing some of those elements from my storyboard are actually pulling through and populating within my unit as well. So as I come in here, I feel like a sense of accomplishment right off the bat, which is just as important for teachers as it is for students. But you can see I have an area where I could add in standards via drop-down menu, right? So all of that's available.
That's right.
I have a section for my learning targets, essential questions, and then I can add in assessments or learning activities over time as well.
That's
and I
great.
can these unit templates vary from organization to organization, as you can imagine. But just on a simplified lens here, you can see how the storyboard really connects through to the unit.
The other thing I think that's important, if you don't mind going back to your homepage here,
Sure.
is that you, like other software groups, if I have a whole school, if you were to pull up one of your clients, for example, I could look at storyboards across a school district. I could be looking at the maps because I can access it. That's one of the reasons we do work with mapping, is so people can see things vertically or down the hall. Right. And I would be able to have access and see precisely what my colleagues are working on, and we could take a look at the development of that. So I just want to throw that in and point out that that's readily accessible on your software.
Absolutely. And we've really been leveraging what we call our curriculum blueprint to do that as well. So this can be public facing, but this is also where teams have been going to kind of get further information on that. So for example, if I wanted to see what's going on in 5th grade science, here's my storyboard. And it took me 3 seconds to get that up, right? All I have to do is click on my subject area, click on my grade level. And here's kind of an end result of what a parent might see. Heidi, to your point earlier around the kind of limiting that view as well. I can see a quick little course description. And then across the bottom of my screen here, I see what are the units that my students would be moving through and what's just a unit focus. This is a very, very simplified version. And if I'd like to, I can even open this up and I can take a deeper look at what that unit looks like. Just the goals. There's no assessments, no learning activities, nothing like that. But it's going to give me a high level overview. But I've really found that parents, this is what is resonating the most, right? Just a brief understanding of what students are moving through, and even checking across grade levels and subjects. Sometimes this is enough to be able to make those connections as well, and we can always dive into the software for a deeper look.
So in other words, we can get a macro view, a big picture view, and we can zoom in to the grade level. We can zoom into a subject. We can zoom into an individual teacher classroom.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I think for me, it's what's been interesting is I use storyboarding as the next iteration of mapping, because the mapping work I started, as you know, was back in my first book on it was 1997 on curriculum mapping. And boy, we were looking for software companies to get started, and there were a few. I mean, back then, I even remember Netscape and some of the earliest search engines. Goodness gracious! And now you've seen over the years so many good groups have set this up. I would just say that, you know, or perhaps use Google Docs, or they can make a simple template. You can, and that's great. And I would encourage you to do whatever, and whatever is helpful to you. But you can see how getting to this level, which is where most schools do work now more and more on software platforms, how the conversion into the storyboarding has multiple impacts on students. So one thing I'm thinking as we look at concluding our conversation here is I'd like to sort of hear your ideas about how this possibilities for the future that you think would be helpful, whether with kids or teachers, and sort of what's exciting you about this work with storyboarding.
Yeah, no, it's a great conversation. I was actually just talking to Allison last week as well about the same thing, and how, you know, I have a kindergartner and a second grader. And so if I were to put something like this in front of my second grader, who's, you know, just learned to read and now can start to understand a little bit more, you know, one of the things I would like to see over time is a student's almost reflection on that storyboard as they move, right? So having a student take a look at Unit 1 after Unit 1 is concluded and say, do I feel like personally I've achieved these learning targets, or do I feel like I really, you know, kind of resonated with that? Trying to understand more, I think half the battle is interest and engagement sometimes. So really kind of capitalizing on the interest of learners, and making that very present. But truthfully, I mean, one of my favorite things about storyboarding is just the fact that it's brought back a level of creativity post-COVID. You know, we were just so much in the motions of get it done. And I've seen teachers just have so much more joy creating something like this, where they get to think a little bit, add some fun imagery, you know, really kind of be creative with the titles. And, you know, if I could capitalize on that all day long, I would, because I just, you know, like I said, the joy it's brought, and just the mindset shift of, you know, this isn't drudgery work. This is something that I can really use and is engaging for me, I think is huge. So that's what I'm most excited about.
That was awesome. I'm getting emails and texts from people like, this is the first curriculum meeting we've had in years where people were rolling up their sleeves and were excited. And there is something about rediscovering and uncovering the sort of strength and the power of the stories that are available in curriculum. You know, we all know, you and I have been in workshops and like together, that the Latin derivation of curriculum is a path to run in small steps. Mm-hmm. And in a way, what storyboarding does is it says we're going to be partners. And if you don't see the path, and you can't see it, then each day it almost creates a little anxiety. What's happening? I got to wait, as opposed to being a partner on that journey. You are great partners with your schools. It's a pleasure to work with you, Kelsey. I know how much you care. And thank you for your insights and your warmth and your insights. Really appreciate your time. And thank you to everyone who took time to view this with us or replays it. You can find us on LinkedIn at Curriculum Storyboards. And thank you so very much. Take care.
Appreciate your time.